They laughed at the girl in 7, mocking her for being small, quiet, and easy to ignore. Nobody guessed she carried a secret bigger than the sky. The plane began falling apart, and she stayed calm. Then the F-22s called her by her call sign, and every laugh turned silent. Before you watch, full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Grace Miller sat in seat 7A with her backpack pressed against her chest. She was small for her age, with short brown hair and a plain gray jacket that looked 2 sizes too big. Nobody on Flight 218 from Denver to Chicago looked at her twice. She was just a quiet girl, traveling alone, the kind of passenger people forget the moment they walk past. The man in seat 7B did not forget her. His name was Mark Ellison, a tall man in a business suit who spent the first 20 minutes of the flight complaining about the small seats and the slow boarding line. When Grace reached down to get her water bottle, her arm brushed his sleeve. He turned to her with a sharp look. "Watch it," he said loudly. "Kids should not be sitting in these rows. This is for people who actually need the space." A few passengers nearby turned their heads. A woman across the aisle gave Grace a sad smile, the kind adults give children they feel sorry for, but do not want to help. Grace said sorry in a small voice and pulled her arm back. Mark shook his head and went back to his phone, muttering about airlines letting children fly without proper supervision. They laughed at the girl in 7A, and nobody thought twice about it. A teenage boy, too, rose back, took a photo of her red face, and showed it to his friend, laughing quietly. An older man across the aisle rolled his eyes and said something about parents who let their kids travel alone these days. None of them knew anything about her. None of them cared to ask. What none of them saw was how still Grace's hands were. She was not shaking. She was not crying inside, even though her cheeks were warm with embarrassment. Her breathing was slow and steady, the kind of breathing that takes years of practice to learn. Her eyes moved from the wing outside her window to the small vibration in the cabin floor, and she noted both without even trying. This was not new to her. She had trained her mind to notice small details long before she ever sat on a passenger plane as a normal traveler. Grace Miller was 17 years old, but her file did not read like a normal teenager's file. 3 years earlier, a school test had flagged her scores as unusual. Her reaction time, her memory, and her ability to stay calm under pressure were far above anything her teachers had seen. A quiet program run by the military noticed the results and asked her parents for a private meeting. What followed was years of training that Grace could never speak about at school, at home with friends, or anywhere outside a small circle of trusted people. She learned to fly small planes first, then jets, then large aircraft and simulators built to copy every emergency a pilot could face. She trained until her hands moved before her mind finished thinking. She earned a call sign after a training flight, where she landed a damaged aircraft so smoothly that her instructors stood in silence, unable to believe what they had watched. They started calling her Falcon 6. It was a name only a small group of people knew, and it meant nothing to the world outside that base. Today on Flight 218, she was not Falcon 6. She was just a girl in seat 7A, going home to see her grandmother, hoping for a quiet flight. The quiet did not last. 40 minutes after Mark Ellison snapped at her, the plane shook hard. It was not the normal bump of light turbulence. The aircraft tilted sharply to one side, and passengers gasped as bags fell from the overhead bins. A drink cart rolled backward and crashed into a seat. The plane groaned, a deep sound that seemed to come from somewhere inside the metal itself. Warning lights flashed above the aisle. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling, swinging back and forth. An alarm began to ring through the cabin, sharp and constant. People screamed. A child near the back cried loudly while his mother held him tight. Mark Ellison grabbed his armrest, his face turning pale, all his earlier anger gone in an instant. In the cockpit, the pilot had been hit hard by a falling object during the first shake and was knocked out. The co-pilot, a younger man named James Turner, found himself alone at the controls with warning lights covering the panel. His hands were shaking. He had trained for emergencies, but nothing prepared him for handling a damaged aircraft completely by himself, with the pilot unconscious beside him and no clear plan forming in his mind. James grabbed the radio and spoke as calmly as he could, though his voice cracked. "This is Flight 218. We have an emergency. The pilot is down. I need help." His words spread fear through the cabin faster than the shaking had. Grace felt the wing angle from her window seat and knew right away that something in the hydraulic system had failed. She had practiced this exact kind of failure more times than she could count in training. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up, moving through the shaking cabin with steady steps while everyone else gripped their seats in fear. A flight attendant reached out to stop her. "Sit down, sweetheart, is not safe." "I need to get to the cockpit," Grace said calmly. "I can help fly this plane." The flight attendant almost laughed despite the fear in her eyes, but something in Grace's calm voice made her pause. Grace explained quickly that she had pilot training and hundreds of hours in the air, and that the plane would lose control completely within minutes if nobody with the right skills reached the controls. The flight attendant looked into her eyes and saw something that did not match a scared child. She stepped aside. Grace reached the cockpit door and knocked in a pattern that only trained pilots would recognize. James heard it through the noise and felt a strange pull to answer, even though it made no sense. He opened the door and saw a teenage girl standing there, calm in the middle of chaos. "Sir, my name is Grace Miller. Call sign Falcon 6. I have flight training, and I can help you land this plane." James stared at her, too shocked to speak at first. Outside the aircraft, 2 military jets had already been sent to check on the plane after it left its normal flight path without warning. Air traffic control had flagged the aircraft as a possible danger, since a sudden change in course without communication raised alarms across the system. The jets closed in fast, flying close enough that passengers could see them through the windows. A voice came through the radio, firm and sharp. "Flight 218, this is your escort. Identify your pilot's status immediately, or we will begin emergency procedures." James looked at Grace, unsure what to say. Grace reached for the radio herself and spoke with a steady voice that did not match her age at all. "This is Falcon 6. I am assuming control of Flight 218. Pilot is unconscious. Hydraulic failure on the right side. Requesting priority landing." There was a pause on the radio. Then the F-22s called her by her call sign, their pilot's voice changing from sharp and cold to careful and respectful in an instant. "Falcon 6 confirmed. We have heard of you. Standing by to escort you in." James could not believe what he was hearing. A trained military pilot, flying one of the most advanced jets in the sky, was speaking to this teenage girl with real respect. He moved aside without another word and let Grace take the controls beside him. Grace worked quickly, checking every gauge, feeling the plane's weight shift under her hands. She explained each step to James in a calm voice, telling him what she needed him to watch and what to report back to her. Slowly, the wild shaking eased. The plane still flew unevenly, fighting against the damage, but it no longer felt like it was falling out of the sky. 10 minutes into the descent, a new warning light appeared on the panel. The remaining hydraulic system was losing pressure fast, and Grace knew they had only a short window before the controls became almost impossible to move. She kept her voice steady even as her mind raced through every option she had trained for. She told James to watch the fuel numbers while she focused fully on keeping the wings level and the nose steady against the pull of the damaged systems. The landing gear would not lower through the normal switch, so Grace reached for the manual release, a heavy lever built for exactly this kind of failure. She pulled it with both hands, and, after a tense few seconds, 3 green lights confirmed the wheels were down and locked. James let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. Grace did not have time to feel relief yet. The runway was close, and every second still mattered. In the cabin, passengers felt the change immediately. The violent shaking became steady movement. People who had been crying began to breathe again. Mark Ellison sat frozen, staring at the empty seat beside him where the girl he had yelled at used to sit, slowly understanding that she was the reason the plane had stopped shaking so badly. Grace guided the aircraft lower, working the controls with the same focus she had shown in every training flight. She spoke with the airport requested the longest runway, and warned them about the damaged systems. The two jets stayed close on either side, watching over her like guardians in the sky. The landing was rough but controlled. The wheels touched the runway hard, and the plane shook one final time before slowing to a stop. For a moment, nobody in the cabin moved. Then the sound of crying and relief filled the plane, people hugging each other, some laughing through tears. James turned to Grace, his hands still shaking from the stress. "You saved us. All of us. I do not know how to thank you." "We did it together," Grace said quietly. "You held the plane steady until I could help. That matters just as much." When the cabin door opened, passengers walked out slowly, many of them looking for the girl who had disappeared into the cockpit. Mark Ellison found her near the front of the plane, his face pale with shame. "I yelled at you," he said, his voice breaking. "I called you a problem. I did not even try to be kind. And you saved my life anyway." Grace looked at him without anger. "You did not know. Most people do not. What matters is what you do now." News of the flight spread fast. Reporters wanted interviews. People online called her a hero. But Grace did not care much for the attention. She thought about the moment she had walked through the shaking cabin, the fear in every face around her, and the second the pilot's voice on the radio changed from cold to respectful the instant he heard her name. Weeks later, at a small event honoring the crew, a young girl approached Grace with wide eyes. She asked if girls could really fly jets, if someone her size could ever be that brave. Grace knelt down to her level and told her the truth. She said that people had laughed at her once, that a stranger had yelled at her for simply existing in the seat beside him, and that none of it had mattered in the end. What mattered was training, patience, and refusing to let other people's opinions decide what she was capable of. Grace never forgot Flight 218. She kept the memory close, not because of the fear or the danger, but because of what it taught her. People often judge from the outside without knowing anything real. The quiet person in the corner, the small girl in row 7, the one nobody expects anything from, might be the one holding everything together when it matters most. She had been underestimated her whole life, and in the end, that was exactly what had made her ready. Back at the training base, her instructors asked her to speak to the newest group of young pilots joining the program. She stood in front of them, small and calm as always, and told them about the flight, about the fear in the cabin, and about the moment two jets in the sky recognized a name most people had never heard before. She told them that skill was never about age or size. It was about staying calm when everyone else could not, and about being ready long before anyone else believed you needed to be. The room was silent as she spoke, every young pilot listening closely, already imagining the day their own quiet training might be tested in the sky.